Hello, readers by eyes and by ears. This is Mari Chan, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all had an excellent weekend, because I did. And now we are moving into a discussion on the burden of pain's memory, or a more simply direct way of putting it, a recap and discussion of YUWU Volume 3 by Zhou or just Meat Bun. So as I told you guys, couldn't do a live for this just because the timing of it wasn't going to work out, but I still at least wanted to do some kind of recap for everyone so you guys can put your thoughts and stuff in the comments and we can have a discussion that way. And hopefully next time we can just do the live discussions again. So without further ado, we are just going to go ahead and get into it because I've got some things to say. I'm going to try to make this video not too long, but you know, it is what it is because I think I have at least 8 points. Maybe there are 9. So we are going to start with the first one, and that is Gumang's memories and not necessarily identity crisis, but identity crisis. So the first thing that I want to make mention of for Volume 3 is that, of course, we have Gumang getting more memories. He already got some of his memories, you know, in fragments in Volume 2, but as we moved into Volume 3, we saw him get a bit more. A lot of them were from his cultivation days in the academy, and so these were considered more on the useless side. So there was really nothing to talk about there, but he also started getting more memories when it came to his sexual dalliances, I'll call them, with Morsi. Specifically, he got the second half, if you will, of Morsi's coming of age. And some of these memories aren't even coming in like dreams and stuff like that. They're more so coming from like things that are happening in the moment that make him get a familiar feeling, but one that he's not used to as Wolfgaga, which I like to call him. So like one example would be when he and Morsi were eating together, and him seeing Morsi eat gave him some, you know, tingly feelings on the inside, and he just wanted to get closer, you know, and it was like, what is this that's going on? So we have that. And of course, when they are finally going to the Bat Island and everything, we have him going to sleep and dreaming about the second half of Morsi's coming of age. And I think that moment was funny, of course, but it was also just very telling about Gumang as an individual, even though he still has these fragmented memories, because of course, what he felt from having that dream is a sense of being needed. And that was something that he really liked. And so, of course, you know, he woke up and he clearly finished in the dream. And so he was like, whoa, what's happening to my body? Am I sick? And Morsi was like, dude, no, you're not sick. Okay. This is just a natural thing. And you have this moment where Gumang is like, hey, like, why didn't you tell me that I can make you feel good this way? Like, I don't necessarily understand the workings of what we were doing, but I know that you liked it. I know that I liked it. And it was nice to have some other emotion directed at me other than, you know, like anger and stuff like that. But it felt like you needed me. And I liked being needed. And if I could do this, you know, let's go ahead and make you more happy. And so I would say that's a monumental moment because we really just get a look at Gumang's caring nature, regardless of if he has his memories or not. Anyone, honestly, if whether you lose your memories, you have them, your core, how you are as an individual is just how you are. And he's someone who doesn't like to see others in pain. And we've seen this over the volumes that he has not liked seeing Morsi in pain. So that was just something that is like, so interesting, so nice, so cool. And even him testing Morsi after the dream when Morsi was like, who likes you? It was very nice. And so, of course, the other memories that are recovered are going to be him, recovering the memories of him begging the emperor for the proper burials, but not getting it. And we're not even going to fully go into that yet. I'll talk about that at another point. Just like the whole time mirror experience on its own is just like, actually, you know what? No, we're going to go ahead and talk about it now. I'll talk about the time mirror probably multiple times, but it'll be on different themes. So the time mirror, we have them going inside of it. Gumang supposing to be going in there, and Morsi, the intruder, essentially. But he didn't want Gumang to have to go and face that alone. And I'm sure he just wanted answers anyway. And so he ended up going into this time mirror with Gumang. And in it, we get to fully experience Morsi's side of Gumang's interactions with the emperor, with Lu Jianxing's death, and just all of that encompassed. First off, let me just say it hurt to have to go through all of that with Gumang and Morsi, but also I'm very glad that Morsi got to go inside and see things from Gumang's perspective, because one thing that I felt a lot is that Morsi was so focused on his own pain and hurt from the betrayal that other than understanding, I understand why you defected, it's like he wasn't necessarily focused on that, only on what he wanted and what he needed from this whole ordeal. But here we have Gumang recovering these memories of essentially the emperor telling him that he is worth nothing, that all of those slaves were worth absolutely nothing. And when I tell you, my heart actually hurt on this because the emperor was so detestable, just to speak so badly to someone who has risked their life for you. All those slave soldiers that risked their lives for this country to be demoted to nothing more than a dog is really, really, truly hurtful. And so we go through this experience. And then, of course, Morsi goes and speaks to the emperor and even is like, hey, don't you think you're going a little too far? We don't want Gumang to defect. And maybe that's the emperor's plan. We don't know. But anyway, the point is, so then he goes to see Gumang at this, the brothel. And Gumang is just drowning in his sorrows, having the ladies sing to him. He's not even like sleeping with them or anything, but he's having them sing these sad songs, which they've never done like at a brothel. Like, why am I singing funeral music? And you just see the pain that he has. And even when he's talking to Morsi, he's already made up in his mind that he's going to turn traitor. And it's like, why are you even here? And of course, all the things that are happening in the time mirror, they did not happen. At least with Morsi's interference, those things did not happen in the real time. But Gumang is essentially like, what's done is done. Let it go. There's nothing you can do for me. They can't be brought back. And I just want to live my life the way that I want to live it. Just let me do that. Leave me alone. And let's just cut ties here, because now we are separate. You are the great Morsi and I am just a dog, essentially. And then, of course, we have him watching Lu Jianxing's death, which I have to say, everything that happened up to that, but especially that and after, was just so painful, because then we have it to the point where he literally watches his own brother, his own comrade, be executed. And then he is instructed by the cruel emperor to take that head and send it to Zhou, the envoy, and apologize to them. And it's like, that was just the final nudge for Gumang to defect. So that's basically a synopsis of what happened. But I think, the thing that was painful for us is Gumang coming out of these memories and, him and Morsi, and both of them being so disoriented. And in that moment, we just have Gumang really not being able to process anything because they were on the Bad Island. Mind you, he was already struggling with how to be himself anyway before they even came to the Bad Island, because he kept getting more and more memories, and it even said he was struggling with how he should respond, what he should and should not say. Like sometimes he was being Wolfgaga and sometimes he was being Gushishong, and maybe like in Li Wei's eyes and stuff, a little bit disrespectful. And so sometimes he was having to filter himself to make sure he wasn't saying the right or wrong things. And then we have it when he was in the time mirror, he relived all of that stuff and then thrown out of the time mirror. It's like in that moment, he went from walking his brother's head to the envoy to then suddenly being a prisoner. And him not having any memories of any of the things he did in the Liao Kingdom in those 5 years. And that must be really, really painful. You know, it's like waking up from a horrible nightmare and you don't even know where you are for a second. You know, it's like, I don't know what that experience is like to live so deep in a past of hurt, and then wake up disoriented, not knowing where you are, and being somewhere that you didn't expect, essentially. And it just so sucks because he didn't really have time to absorb this because, boom, they were fighting again, fighting the rat beasts and the bats and stuff like that. And so I guess my question concerning this first point, as far as Gumang's memories and his identity crisis, is, in you guys' opinion, do you think it's better that Gumang has gained his memories? Or do you think it would have been better if he just stayed Wolfgaga? So, of course, we know that Morsi is happy about it. You know, he said, I'm glad. And we know that's one thing that he's been dying for. But now he just has that pain and suffering right at the forefront of his brain again. And then the other thing is with him not remembering the Liao Kingdom stuff, which there's some question about that. Do you think it's better for him to not remember what he did in those 5 years with the Liao Kingdom? Or do you think it would be better for him to learn what happened? So that is a question I would love for you all to answer, if you can. And then we're going to move to the second point that I have. And that is going to be Morsi's blindness and guilt. So, like I said, throughout the previous volumes, we have a focus on Morsi's feelings of anger and hatred, but also, you know, still love. But he's focused so much on himself. And, you know, even being like, okay, I understood why you committed treason, but why did you go to the Liao Kingdom? And what are you leaving me with, you know? And I'm so hurt and I'm so angry and I don't know what to do with you and I don't want to see you and stuff like that. But we learn that Morsi put Gumang on a pedestal, which is really, really dangerous. Of course, you know, even if you don't put someone on a pedestal, you're going to be let down by those that you love if they do something, you know, bad, horrible, detestable. But the higher on a pedestal you put someone, the more it hurts when they fall from that pedestal. And it's crazy because you would think about the person falling from the pedestal being hurt, but really we're the ones who get hurt by them falling. And so we have Morsi who put him on this pedestal, which caused him to be blind. And I would say that that was something that even happened from the very beginning when they were in their relationship all those years ago, because he just saw Gumang as like this great person, very, you know, caring, but frivolous and joyous and strong and always, no matter what, you know, if Gumang says it's okay. Everything's going to be all right. But he couldn't necessarily fully see Gumang's pain, even in moments where he may have been there. Like when the slave collar thing happened in volume 1, even though he was there and saw Gumang's humiliation and Gumang just like smiled through it and was like, it's okay. He saw it, but I think because of how Gumang responded, it still wasn't necessarily fully like clicking like that. And so he put Gumang on this pedestal, and then the beast of the altar fell from that. And even after, you know, they failed in the final battle, Morsi is just like, oh, you know, he'll recover from this. But the sad thing is for him to have looked in, I can't remember what it was called, but not the time mirror, but something akin to the time mirror, where he was able to see the meeting that Gumang had with the emperor, and he saw how the emperor responded to him. And still, he had this thought that Gumang would get over the pain of losing all of his comrades and not even being able to give them a proper burial. So at this point, it's like, okay, you're putting him at God status and just like, oh, that's fine. He lost thousands of people, but he'll bounce back. You know what? It's whatever. We lose people all of the time. He'll bounce back, and even seeing him at brothels and stuff like that, one of the things that I'm fully believing is that Morsi avoided him because it had said in Volume 3 that Morsi didn't want to see him like that. And I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but he definitely avoided seeing Gumang because he didn't want to see him as any less than what he envisioned for Gumang to be, which I would say is what made him a terrible friend in that moment. And even a terrible lover, regardless of if you were unsure of Gumang's sincerity compared to your own. That was a time when Gumang needed you. Because he was falling, he was wallowing in his despair, and he already had these people who were looking down on him, again, saying he was less than a dog, that, it was his honor and privilege to die for Chonghua. But as soon as he messed up, then it was like, no, you actually suck and deserve to be punished to the fullest degree, to be called a criminal, and it wasn't even his, actions that led to what happened. And so he failed Gumang, which is something that he mentioned. And I'm very glad that he did, because it's important for him to know that he did. It was important for Morsi to really go into the time mirror and see everything that Gumang went through, to see how much everything truly hurt him, to see how low he had sunken. Because when you have a picture of people in your mind, a picture of a person in your mind, and you only want to see them in that light, you do a lot more damage by avoiding the pain that they're actually going through. So the next thing is, even with him being in the time mirror, I'm still like, so Gumang said he doesn't resent him or anything like that. But even still, with him going into the time mirror, I was disappointed in Morsi, because here it is, you weren't able, no, you were able, at least while you were there. You didn't support Gumang the way that he was so in need of in the past, in those 8 years. But then even when you went into the time mirror, after he lost Lu Dansing, you followed, but you did not embrace him until it was too late. You did not tell him that you were there until it was too late, because you wanted to not expose yourself. But at that point, it's like, you should have removed your Harry Potter cloak and you should have been there for him in that moment, even if it didn't change anything. Like, this is my opinion. I'm not saying what he did was wrong, but that was your chance to be there for him. And the thing is, it's not like Gumang didn't remember what happened in the time mirror. He remembered Morsi's interference in the time mirror. So even though you couldn't support him in the past, even though you couldn't embrace him and try to comfort him in the past, you could have tried to comfort him in the moment in the time mirror. And that is something that Gumang would have remembered. So that's just like a personal thing that I thought about, that I'm like, okay, you could have done better, but that's neither here nor there. So, it's so sad. Like, the whole thing, I'm not mad at either of them, but it's just sad to see that Gumang was placed on this pedestal. And because he was placed on that pedestal, he didn't give Gumang the help that he needed. And don't get me wrong, we all have to be responsible for ourselves and ask for help when we need it. But sometimes we don't. That's just real. Sometimes we don't ask because we're hurting too much and we can't even see past that pain, or it gets to the point where we're just done. And we can't ask for help. We don't want to ask for help, but we need someone there to help us anyway. So again, we have Morsi's blindness and guilt, but I'm glad that he was able to see everything. So my question here is, do you guys think that Morsi was truly blind to everything concerning Gumang? Or do you think he was just trying too hard to believe in Gumang's strength and maybe deliberately did not look at his moments of weakness? And I'm not meaning that in like a malicious way or anything, but do you think that he was completely ignorant, or if he just simply ignored those signs? So now we're going to move to the next point. And it's actually going to be about the time mirror. I'm calling this point Time Mirror and Betrayal. So yes, technically I've been talking about the time mirror a lot, but this is specifically just about the time mirror in general. First off, I'm going to say that this is a very cruel device that the Shogun, crap, what was he again? 1 second. Shangao. This is a very cruel device that the Shangao brought out, which wasn't even a part of the original agreement in the first place. He was just supposed to get some memories from each of them for the questions that they asked. But of course, because he felt so much pain and suffering in Gumang, then he got greedy and wanted to get more. So already we just have this really cruel device that was created, and it forces people to relive their trauma in vivid detail. And so just talking about the Shangao, how evil and malicious do you have to be to force someone into such a predicament? Like, I know that that's what he lives off of. That's what he eats. That's, what fills his belly, but it's evil, and I would hate to be forced to relive my trauma in real time. And then on top of that, when you are pulled out of the time mirror, it's not just like, oh, your memories are restored. No, you're disoriented because you go from, your last moment inside of the time mirror, and that's like it just happened. It's not like, oh, I remember that what happened to me 10 years ago. No, it feels like it just happened 5 seconds ago. And so this time mirror that Meatbun created, I just think is absolutely horrible. And it sucked so much. So then let's just go to the next point, which was on the betrayal, since I said time mirror and betrayal. And that is talking about Lu Zhenxing's actions, you guys. So here we have Lu Zhenxing, basically Gumang's best freaking friend, okay? Best friends to the point where they're called brothers to each other, and someone that he clearly trusted. Yet Lu Zhenxing, while they were in battle, decided to go kill the envoy of a neutral party while they were at war with the Liao Kingdom. And so that gave the Liao Kingdom an upper hand because they teamed together with this once neutral party and ended up causing the deaths of so many soldiers. And this part, when we got into the head of Lu Zhenxing and he said everything he said, it was so disturbing because it's like, one of the things I think I said before is that you can love someone and treat them badly. And that may be a sucky thing for people to hear, but in truth, it's reality. We all learn to love in different ways. Now, the way one loves might be wrong, but that doesn't mean the person doesn't love you. They just have a twisted sort of love. And that is the category that I am going to put Lu Zhenxing in, at least for now. So he had all these people believing that he killed the envoy because he was just rash and hot-headed. Meanwhile, like he told Morsi, he was like, can you give Gumang Guga a little more credit? Can you give me a little more credit? Us slaves, like, we're not stupid. I didn't just fly into a rage. What I did it on purpose. I got thousands and thousands of soldiers killed on purpose because I wanted Gumang to fall from grace. That is potent. So potent and so sad because he did this so that Gumang could fall from grace so that he could stop fighting for people who did not appreciate him. But at what cost? At the cost of Gumang's peace, at the cost of his joy, and even at the cost of his dreams. Regardless of what Lu Zhenxing thought, Mang wanted to make a difference. He wanted to be a pioneer for the slaves to start living a new life and be seen in a different light. And Lu Jianxing took that away from him. And so it's one of those moments where it's like, yeah, you may love Mang and you may have thought that you were doing what was best for Mang, but what you did was very sociopathic. I don't know. I had to think about that for a moment and I don't feel like it. But what you did was extremely selfish because, again, just like Morsi, you had a certain picture in your mind of the way that you saw Mang or the way that you wanted him to be, and you made decisions in order to make him be that way. Whereas, I'm not saying Morsi made decisions to make him be that way, but he made decisions thinking that Mang would be that way. Whereas Lu Jianxing was trying to force him to change. And it's just so sad because this is a man that Mang trusted so much. And yet he is the one that caused essentially all of the suffering that Mang has experienced from, that point up until now. And it sucks. It sucks really bad because, yeah, you would think after this, slaves are definitely going to just be slaves. They're not going to have another chance because we had Hua Puan, who was a slave and then betrayed the country and founded freaking Liao Kingdom. And then we have Mang, who defected as well. So it's like, not only did you stop him from accomplishing his dreams and his goals, you have set it back to the point that it may never actually ever be accomplished. Just because you didn't believe something was possible did not mean that Mang had to believe it was also impossible, and so it's just Lu Jianxing's character. I agree with Morsi when he said that he was a madman because not only did you tear down Mang's hopes and dreams, you had thousands upon thousands of men killed. That is awful. And you're thinking it's better to have, 30,000 killed than to have 70,000 killed later or whatever. But in truth, had it not been for Morsi, all of y'all would have been killed because the emperor was set on killing every single slave in the army, in the military, He was going to kill them all. But fortunately, Morsi was there and he took the vow of calamity, so all was well. But it's like, no, not better, because your actions, had Morsi not been there, would have caused the same amount of damage that you were trying to avoid. So that's all I have to say about the time mirror specifically, and then talking specifically on Betrayal from Lu Jianxing. So for you guys, do you think that his actions were right? Lu Jianxing, I'm talking about. Do you think that as a brother that he was truly protecting Mang from disappointment? Or do you think that he was selfish in his own desires for what he wanted, and destroying Mang's dreams? Because some people, might think that what he did was right. I don't know. So just let me know your thoughts on that. And we're going to move into the next point, which is going to be weapons. Weapons. Yes. Fangbo, Yongye, Twentian. They get a little feature in here. Honestly, if I could feature more things, I probably would have, because there were also so many artificing products that I liked. But anyway, let's focus on these weapons. So first we have Fangbo. This is going to be a shorter point. Fangbo. This is Mang's holy suona, and it's an instrument to be played, with the mouth. So that would be a wind instrument, I suppose. And this is something that he was supposedly never to use again because it was a holy weapon, and he moved to the demonic arts. But while they were battling in the cave and Morsi was on his deathbed from, being an intruder in the time mirror, while Jiang Yexue had used too much spiritual energy, and Murong Chuyi went to go rescue Yue Chenqing, the only person that they had to rely on was Mang, which he did rescue them. So let's just give props to Mang, because Mang was doing it up. He was doing his thing. But he tried to summon Fangbo. But unfortunately, because of his lost souls and because, his core is damaged, he wasn't able to use that weapon. The thing I will say, though, is I was glad to see that was his instinct. His first instinct was to use Fangbo. But then, unfortunately, he had to bring out Yongye, which was the demonic blade he had forged in the Liao Kingdom. So, this weapon was mentioned multiple times in this volume after he finally brought it forth. So we have it mentioned, of course, first with him using it because Feng Bo failed and he's fighting off these bat rats, whatever, ching, 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 ching. And, he's doing it up. But this triggers Morsi. And this is why I actually wanted to talk about this, mostly because of Morsi. Also, mostly Morsi. Anyway, I'm sorry. We have Morsi bringing out Tuntian, which he brought out Tuntian before, and that was to stop the demonic fire that happened with Li Qingtian releasing that in, the village, the community or whatever. But now we have him bringing it out to use something completely different. And that is one of the incantations or techniques, if you will, swallowing Leviathan. This move is a vicious technique that he vowed to never, ever use because it was so vicious and ruthless. It literally incinerated all of those thousands or however many of those things were there, those bats and rats. And it's such a vicious technique that would scare the living daylights out of Satan. It's basically how it was described. And he used it. But this was something he vowed to never use. So why did he use it? Because he was triggered by seeing Gumang use Yongye. I can only imagine how painful it had to be to watch Gumang, even though he was fighting for them, to watch Gumang use the same weapon that he stabbed Morsi with to fight off these bats and these rat monsters. So, it was really cool to hear that Morsi really has that great of a power, but it was also really sad to know that he was so triggered that he used something that he promised himself that he would never ever use. So those are pretty much all the things I wanted to say about the weapons. And I also just really hated the fact that after Gumang used Yongye, for the rest of the story, you saw him using it a lot, which was like stabbing the dagger even more into Morsi's heart, which was a representation of Gumang and his coldness even to Morsi after, the man woke up from his unconsciousness. He was playing with it, twirling it around in his hands and everything, like it was just a casual thing, not a weapon that you literally stabbed into your lover's chest at some point in life. No, you're just playing around with it. And that was mean. Honestly, if you ask me, I think that was mean. Like throwing around the weapon that you used to hurt him in his face, like it was just nothing. So of course, we're going to go to the next point. And this is specifically about Murong Chuyi's complexity, which we only got a little taste into. I'm sure we'll get more as we continue reading, but we have to talk about it because our little Chuwaning, our little Sundir or Sundare, depending on where you are and how you pronounce it, we saw a different side of him within this volume. So, of course, we all remember, seeing him and his interaction with Gumang and everything at the Peach Blossom Lake. But here we have it. Yue Chenqing has gone missing, and he specifically went to the Bat Island. They would go off to save him. And, well, first, that's point number one, because honestly, he's so cold to Yue Chenqing. You would think that he would even ignore it then and be like, well, okay, you said Morsi's going? Fine. Morsi and Jiang Yexue can go. That's whatever. But so he went, which is not terribly a surprise. But anyway, so we know that he has a secret illness, right? And he has hidden it because it's a vulnerability that he doesn't want anyone to know about. But who knows about it regardless? Yue Chenqing. And Yue Chenqing has been obsessed with medicinal knowledge and everything for a while now. And even if he doesn't know the inner workings of Murong Chuyi's sickness, he's been trying to find like a miracle cure for his uncle. This uncle that disdains him and ignores him and treats him really coldly, right? So, yeah. He goes off to this bat island and he gets caught by the Bat Queen, put in her prison, has a goo worm put in him that will hopefully kill him. And then she can use his corpse to refine him into whatever man, mysterious man we don't know yet, that she wants him to be. Right. And Murong Chuyi, the entire time, is staying on topic. Like when things are going down with the Shogun, he was like, all right, question, where is he? Got it where he is? Okay, bye. Going to get him. And then even when the Shanghai is like, "Rawr, no, you don't do that. I need more memories. Nom, nom, nom." He's like, okay, let me fight a couple of these bats. Okay, now I'm gone because I'm going to get my nephew. So he just had his priorities like full on Yue Chenqing. But the thing, again, about Murong's complexity that we get, let me just actually stay on subject, is we get to understand his past resentment, his past life that gives us insight to his resentment toward Jiang Yexue and Yue Chenqing, which I'm very glad that we got that, because I was like, why are you being so mean to specifically Yue Chenqing, who adores the hell out of you? And why are you being mean to Jiang Yexue? Although I could understand that a little more just because, you know, the family, all of them disdain Jiang Yexue. But we understand that, okay, first off, Murong Chuyi was adopted into the Yue clan by Yue Chenqing's mother. And it was not a good marriage that she was in. Shoot, before she even got married, her man got a concubine knocked up and gave birth to Jiang Yexue. So I was like, oh, now I understand why you don't like Jiang Yexue. You know, he didn't do anything wrong, but he is the son of the concubine who you believe ruined everything for Murong Huang. You know, just made her life absolutely horrible, right? And then we have Murong Huang, who also got pregnant with Yue Chenqing, and he just thought that was a mistake on top of a mistake, you know? So now we have resentment toward Yue Chenqing just because you feel like maybe Yue Chenqing should not have been born because the mother was already unhappy, you know? So we got that understanding. But despite his resentment, not only did he go to save Yue Chenqing, and that was his sole focus, he used the forbidden sacred heart technique in attempts to save Yue Chenqing. And this was supposed to be like basically a miracle cure, a miracle healing cure, and would even fight off any sickness and fever and stuff like that, even though, you know, we learned that it didn't happen because of the goo worms. But he used this, something in which he was supposed to have a pure mind and a clear, you know, a pure heart and a clear mind. Nothing going on in his brain that would deter the technique, because if he didn't, he would be the one getting hurt. Not necessarily Yue Chenqing, but the drawback would fall on him. And the worst result was death. And despite having these resentments and all of these deep feelings concerning Yue Chenqing and even Jiang Yexue, but we're focusing on Yue Chenqing, he used the Sacred Heart technique knowing that it could hurt him. So now we see that, oh, perhaps Murong Chuyi is not as uncaring as we thought he was. Obviously, as Morsi noted, Yue Chenqing holds some small place, at least, in Murong Chuyi's heart. So that was nice to see. And, you know, he even tried to comfort Yue Chenqing during his feverish nightmare and, you know, crying out, "Oh, be unfortunate, don't be mad at me. Mama, it hurts, it hurts." You know, he was like, "It's okay. I'm here. It's fine." He was so awkward. And then, like, right after that, Yue Chenqing still having this fever. He's like, "Bear with it, bro." I was like, oh my gosh, you are so Sundir. So it was just nice to see a softer side of Murong Chuyi toward his nephew specifically. So after learning a little bit more about Murong Chuyi, do any of you sympathize with him at all? I'm not sure I sympathize with him. I just got a better understanding. But I do hope that he can move out of that mindset, because both Yue Chenqing and Jiang Yexue had nothing to do with the decisions that were made by the adults, essentially. They're innocent in this matter. They didn't ask to be brought into this world. They didn't ask to be the mother of the concubine or the mother of the official wife or any of that stuff. So they don't deserve such harsh treatment. So now, speaking of Yue Chenqing, let's talk about him for just a second. Literally just a second, to provide more clarity on what I just said about Murong Chuyi. So we already have established that Yue Chenqing is a very young, happy, gullible or naive guy, and he's kind, actually. He's been kind to pretty much anyone, even to Mang, when he had to tie him up or put him on the bamboo thing. He was like, "Gugu, like, wolf daga, let me just do this really quick. Okay, cool." And he clearly doesn't have any resentment toward anyone. The only person he's not kind to is Jiang Yexue. But of course, he was fed certain things since he was a little youngin', so that makes sense. But I want to talk more, just a quick second, about his character, because he has an uncle who I'm sure it's clear, like, he ain't just a dummy. His uncle does not like him, okay? His uncle does not like him at all, but he pays so much attention to his uncle and adores him so freaking much that he still is always trying to appease him. And not only that, but on his own birthday, he ran off, not for himself, but for his uncle, to find a miracle pill that would hopefully cure Murong Chuyi's sickness. Now, the thing that I will say is he should have left a note or something to where he was going, and that could have been found sooner or whatever, but he ended up not being able to send anything until, he was locked up and in the prison and he was losing blood and everything like that. But we have just such a nice, wholesome character in Yue Chenqing, and this young naivety for him going off on his own to conquer something like this. But at the same time, I get it, because Murong Chuyi was hiding the sickness from him. So why would he share, like, hey, I want to go to this bat island to get this thing for you? Or even share it with anyone else, like, hey, I want to go to this bat island to get this thing for my uncle. So, of course, him making that stupid but very kind-hearted decision, well-intentioned, got him poisoned with the goo worms, and he almost dies. We know he's not going to die, but, we'll see. So then, of course, we also have this way to save him, which Zhong is doing what she's doing, and then she says, in order to, finish it out, they are going to need a relative's blood, which, of course, she finds out Murong Chuyi was adopted, and it's actually Jiang Yexue. So my main thing here, because we didn't see what happened, it stopped there, so it's going to be in this volume 4. I want to know, when Yue Chenqing wakes up and finds out, of course, that his fourth uncle saved him from the prison, but when he finds out that Jiang Yexue gave some of his blood to save his life, if he is going to change how he sees Jiang Yexue, or if he's going to keep holding on to the resentment that he learned from his family. Because if we remember, there was one time after the demonic fire thing happened and he realized that the indestructibility talismans went out, that it was clearly Jiang Yexue who gave them out. And he was like, was my uncle wrong? And was Jiang Yexue actually right? So he clearly has a mind to think of his own. We know that, even he didn't give in to any peer pressure of, oh, let me smoke the ephemera with you, or, stuff like that. So, I just want to know, will his mindset change? Will he finally give Jiang Yexue a chance? Or is he going to continue to treat him the same? And my next point, which y'all already know how I feel about this person, but we're going to talk about Jiang Yexue. This is the point. That is the title of this point. Jiang Yexue. So, first off, let me just say that his crafts are really, really cool, because he's got this freaking flying ship that's the size of a walnut that he can tap with his finger, and then suddenly it's huge. It could fit all those people on there, and they're flying in the clouds. They're sailing on the clouds. And then he's got the talisman sparrow, even though we didn't really get to see it come to fruition because it got stopped in the Batcave. But we also have his clay boat maiden that is really intelligent and clever and has a lot of fine detail. And I'm just like, man, this guy is really inventive and powerful. I mean, we know he's literally like the greatest artificer in Chonghua, even though he still says that his power does not compare to Murong Chuyi's, which I think is cap. They're probably both just as good as each other. Who knows? Jiang Yexue just might be even better. Who knows? We don't know, but no need to compare them. The point is, the man is badass and he creates a lot of cool things, and I like him for it. I also thought it was funny that he kept one of Gumang's creations as far as the little clay boat people, and Gumang was like, who made this? It's ugly. He was like, actually you did, bro. So I thought that was like a cute little thing and just showing like their past friendship with each other. But here's the thing that y'all know I want to mention, because y'all know I've been suspicious of Jiang Yexue for a long time because he's so kind to the point of absurdity. I don't trust that. So when Moxi mentioned the strange things he saw from the time mirror, meat bun, 肉包不吃肉, she put that Jiang Yexue's hand curled around the arm on his wheelchair. And here's my thing. If that wasn't an important detail, then why did she put it there? Because it could have literally just said, you know, I've been trying to get information from Gumang, but of course he won't talk. But now that it's just you and I, what happened in the time mirror? And then Moxi could have been like, oh, I saw some really strange things in the time mirror. And he was like, really? What? No. It said, oh, I saw some really strange things in the time mirrors. Curls hands around the wheelchair. To me, y'all know, if y'all have watched C-dramas, okay, when y'all see people curling their hands around something, it's indicative of a tense situation, it's indicative of stress and anger, or it's indicative of being found out. So I'm like, you want to know what he saw so you can know what you need to do next, because you did something and I don't like it, because you're such a nice person and you're being so kind and everything. But I feel like you may have played a part in the stuff of another. So anyway, that is what it is. I won't talk anymore about it because I'm sure I will talk some more about how untrustworthy I find Jiang Yexue. But the other thing is, he also knows, this is not a knock against him because Murong Chuyi knows, but Jiang Yexue offered to use the Sacred Heart technique this time on Yue Chenqing in hopes that it would help. But then, you know, Zhongzhong and Gumang came, but it shows that he knows it too. And I'm like, oh, you know this? How do you know this? So my question for you guys is, do you trust Jiang Yexue? And why or why not? Because I can tell y'all I don't. And I already told y'all why I don't. So then I am going to tell you guys about my next point, which is going to be Bat Queen Mysteries, which this won't be long because, you know, we're just getting a little bit information on this individual, this lady, this demonic cultivator. But yeah, so we have Wu Yan is her name. And we know that she is trying to cultivate to immortality, which I was actually glad to get a little bit on this because, you know, we don't really hear a lot about demons trying to cultivate the immortal's path or a heavenly path, if you will. And we don't hear those who are on the righteous path trying to cultivate on a demonic path for real. The closest we got to that, of course, would be in Mo Dao Zu Shi with Wei Wuxian going from cultivating the right way to, you know, cultivating the demonic way. But it's not something that is even talked about like heavily, at least not in a lot of the things that I have read. And I mean, specifically, it's not talked heavily about one person switching from one thing to another, but specifically from the demonic to the righteous or, you know, immortality, whatever you want to call it. Because there are some, you know, people go from the righteous path to the demonic path, like Wei Wuxian, like Morjan. But this is another way, which was very exciting. So we learn from her specifically that because she is cultivating this path, it's going against her nature. And because she is doing that, it's using up her spiritual energy a lot quicker, which is causing her to age. And so here we have it. She kidnaps Zhongzhong, who is part of this like tribe, this feathered tribe, and they are as close to gods as you can get. And she's using her blood, you know, doing the bloodletting and stuff to refine pills to slow down this process. And it was interesting to hear about it because, of course, we hear like, for example, when Wei Wuxian cultivated the demonic path. Lan Zhan was like, I mean, when you do this is going to affect your mind and everything like that. And I would say ultimately, though, there wasn't necessarily, I mean, I could be wrong. I need to read it again, but I won't. There wasn't necessarily any physical harm that was done to Wei Wuxian by using it. Unless, of course, he just got overwhelmingly in his feelings or something. But just like using it on a regular, just la-di-da, la-di-doo-di-doo, like what he did at the hunt thing or for the points, it didn't really do anything to him. I mean, it did change his character to become, I guess, like, not change his character, intensified his haughtiness, maybe. But anyway, we have the Bat Queen, who we see that it's affecting her so negatively that she's getting old, essentially, And so that was just really, really cool to see. Or hear another person going from demonic cultivating to the other side. And then we have Mang giving us a theory that, she's using this goo worm or the goo worms to try and replicate someone she knew in the past. We're going to assume that it may be someone she once loved or was obsessed with. So I'll be interested to see more about this. Who is the person that she grew obsessed with? Did she hate that they didn't love her, or was it someone who did love her and maybe she lost them, or just what was up with that? So whoever it is, though, she clearly can't forget them. I'm gonna agree with Mang that is the case. That is what makes the most sense. And now we are going to move into my very last point. I feel like I've been talking for a while, and that is Mang's coldness and Mang's oath, which is also like a revelation in itself that wasn't necessarily caught. So we have Mang talking so much that he gives himself away because he told them that he doesn't remember anything about the Liao Kingdom and his 5 years there, yada, yada, yada. But he's just talking about the history concerning them and everything, which is stuff that he would have learned from the Liao Kingdom. And Murong Chuyi calls him out about it. So, of course, he's like, well, why would I tell you guys? Because would you have agreed to not tell the emperor if you knew already? But hey, now you know, and you promised. So, but he still gives us off this air like he still doesn't know things fully. So then he makes an oath, basically saying that he will suffer if he's lying. He will suffer alone and watch the person he loves marry someone else and live on in jealousy. And of course, we know that this is tied to Moxi and Princess Mengzi, because Jiang Yexue, when he was taunting Moxi, like, nobody wants you, you still haven't gotten a wife, it's because you suck. And Jiang Yexue was like, that's not true. Why are you being so mean to him? He clearly hasn't gotten married because Princess Mengzi's health is poor and he's just waiting on her to get better. So with this piece of information, he makes this vow, which is an indirect confession that Moxi did not catch at all. He heard it, but he didn't catch it because it's not like Mang said, I will suffer alone. And maybe one day when I fall in love, I'll watch that person fall in love with someone else. He said, no, I will watch the person that I love. So this is a present time thing. There is someone that I love. I will watch them marry someone else and live in jealousy. And like I said, that wasn't a confession. But if I were Moxi, I would have been like, you love someone? Is that someone me? Because it's easier to take a vow on things that are like in front of you or right present. It's not that you can't make a vow on future things, but it's harder to do so. Like even with Moxi taking the vow of calamity, he made a vow on himself, like, I will be loyal to you. And that was something deeply personal. If you're taking a vow on something that hasn't even happened, it's kind of like, it's not as serious. But for him to say, like, the person I love, I'll watch him marry someone else. I don't know. To me, I'm not surprised that Moxi didn't catch it. So I'm not saying like, dude, why didn't you catch it? I'm like, obviously it was a lot going on, so it's fine that he didn't. But I'm like, hey, he just confessed. Did you hear it? But even with him confessing, indirectly, it doesn't matter because he's being so cold to Morsi. He's being so mean after they've gotten out of this time mirror. He's being very passive aggressive, cutting and distant and nice to everyone else. But Morsi gets the shit end of the stick, which is very unfortunate. And he even insists that he does not hate Morsi, that he has no resentment toward him for not being there for him when he needed him, and that he's just let go of everything. He's let go of the 17-year bond, although I'm wondering if it was truly that long. I think Morsi is possibly counting the time that they were apart, which I don't count because it was a long time. But anyway, 17-year bond, right? And you're telling me that you just let it all go? It was hard seeing Mang be so cruel and distant and biting toward Morsi. And I truly need more of a perspective on this. And I mentioned in the last video, like, is he really truly cold? Is this how he feels? Or is he protecting Morsi? Or maybe himself? So theories in the comments. Do y'all think he really has turned cold and, maybe things will happen and his heart will soften again? Or do you think he's trying to protect Morsi or protect himself? Or do you think there's another option that has not been mentioned? So those are pretty much all of my points that I want to talk about concerning YUWU Volume 3. Just the turbulence of this book. And so now, like I said, the main questions that I have for Volume 4 are, will Yue Chenqing's attitude toward Jiang Yexue shift after this Batcave arc? Who in the world is the Bat Queen trying to recreate? Why is Mang so cold? Is it performance, self-protection, or true detachment? And I feel like this is something we could find out in the 4th volume. I don't think it's going to take forever for us to find it out. I'm hoping we'll find it out in the 4th volume. We also want to know who in the world that black cloaked man was that Morsi did not reveal and, had the voice altering and everything. And my last question is, how much of Mang's memories will actually return? Because as he said, he's missing 2 souls, so he's never going to recover everything. I want to know how true that is. Not saying that he's lying or anything, but just if there's a way to recover those things without him getting his souls. And then, of course, a question not necessarily for Volume 4, but just in general. Will Mang get his 2 souls back? Or is that something that he will forever live without? Yeah. So that is pretty much it. Those are all of my thoughts on Volume 3. I hope you enjoyed hurting with me. And let's hurt some more together in Volume 4, shall we? Well, einnehmen.